Whoever you are, wherever you are, hope you are blessed and doing safe. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings, family. Of course, I'm tuning in. You see me without the glasses off today. Whoever, whoever you are, wherever you are, hope you are blessed and doing safe. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings, family. Of course, I'm tuning in. You see me without the glasses off today. But if you're looking for some opportunities, particular advertisement opportunities, then look no further at the link at the bottom to my email address. You can hit me up for advertisement opportunities. We are supporting and promoting your businesses here on this channel. You can also, if you would like to donate and subscribe to our Patreon, a link is at the bottom as well. So you have multiple ways in which you can advertise with the platform by emailing me when we go on through our live stream. You also have access to premium content, those that want to see premium content that you will not find here on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, as I am suspended probably by now. You guys can check out the Patreon at link at the bottom. But advertisement opportunities, definitely email me, gavin.grich1@gmail.com for rates. And for the Patreon, it is the same as the YouTube channel. It is channel gboot2786. All right, I'll holla. Peace. Good evening, good evening, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are live, we are live. I'm coming at you with 5. I know I do not, I said I was taking a break from YouTube, but today I couldn't let this day go out. I couldn't let this day end, rather, without me saying something about today because as I posted in the description, family, first off, good evening. Welcome to another edition of Random Topic Tuesdays on channel gboot2786. Gavin Richard, our backup channel, as well as Periscope, and if you're on X and on Facebook. Welcome, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are. I hope you're blessed and doing safe. We call tonight's program, do you remember? We asked a question, do you remember the time? Because today marks the 65th birthday of the King of Pop, the greatest entertainer of all time, as stated by Berry Gordy, and I think echoed around the world. Everyone knows Michael Jackson is the undisputed king of entertainment, and there's never been anyone like him. And had he lived, he would be celebrating his 65th birthday. So I say today is a day of celebration, but it's also a day of somber because not only that, August 29th has a different place and meaning for me. It is the 18th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina when it struck the Gulf Coast, affecting my hometown of New Orleans, as well as other areas across the Gulf from Mississippi, Alabama, other places. The whole entire city, however, New Orleans, the eyes were on New Orleans, as we've seen in the pictures I was showing you earlier. And it's a day of celebration, but also a day of sorrow. It's a day of commemoration and a day of remembrance. And Hurricane Katrina, as a kid, for me, I was 19 years old, and everybody knows I've told this story before because I've done anniversary shows on this page. I can't forget where I come from, even from where I'm going. And the images, like the image you see here, are some of the things that I remembered after the storm had passed. I was the only one in my family that really packed all the clothes and items, more clothes than I was going to need for a couple of days. Everybody thought and thinks that, especially when you're here in the Gulf Coast, on the Gulf side, when a hurricane comes, especially the last couple of years before Katrina, we were like, well, we would get ready, we evacuate. A storm gets so close to New Orleans, and then it does a 180, it goes somewhere else. I think the year before that, when 04, we evacuated to Houston. We went for this hurricane called Ivan. So I was not tripping. I was thinking we're going to come back home and so forth. Everything was going to be okay. And we saw the storm had struck, but it struck the Gulf. It didn't hit New Orleans. And I talk about that often because it was not Katrina that caused the damage to New Orleans. It was the people in government that did this, which is why I wrote the book. And I was so, and I had heard from people. Let me rewind that. I had heard even stories from people that had stayed in the lower ninth ward and in the ninth ward and others, uh, some in the seventh ward, who said that Katrina had passed. There was wind and rain, but there was no flooding. And subsequently, when they heard a boom, is when all hell broke loose and water came in. Now they try to say, well, the barge came through the lower ninth ward, which it did. However, there was a court proceeding, and I talk about this in my book. The barge didn't cause. What the judge found was that the barge was not what broke the levee, which I thought was interesting because if you looked at it, it would fit right through there. And I talked to Baba Dick Gregory, the late Dick Gregory, about it, and I remember he did an interview with Kathy Hughes, and he said the levees were blown up. Now they did it in 1927. My grandfather was 9 years old at the time. They did it in Betsy. That's what was on rumored. Mayor Skiro allegedly admitted it on his deathbed. Skiro was the mayor during Hurricane Betsy. Now I wasn't around then. My mom was in the ninth ward, and supposedly they heard about it. Now Betsy actually is the only hurricane before Katrina that actually struck New Orleans directly. Katrina never struck New Orleans directly, and that's the key. And plus, New Orleans was not on the worst side of the storm. If you know meteorology or you ask any meteorologist, the northeast quadrant of a hurricane, which is the right corner, if you see it on the screen, the northeast corner is where the eye is the strongest. The wind, especially when the eye gets smaller and smaller, that means it's stronger. Well, Katrina was a category 3. It was originally a 5, but when it got to the coast, it weakened. I have all of this in my book, Katrina, Eyes Have Not Seen, Ears Have Not Heard. I have resources out of the blue that you all can read this. I had well over 150 references or better. I interviewed multiple people that stayed in the storm. I was the reason why I did this book, let me rewind it. I did the book because I heard people talking about my city, and I was seeing things. They were talking about not bringing New Orleans back. They had a commission, a Bring New Orleans Back commission, where they wanted to make the lower ninth ward and New Orleans East green space. I was alive. I saw all of this. I haven't forgotten that too, Danielle. It is the 2-year anniversary of Hurricane Ida. Now, Ida hit New Orleans directly, but Ida was a weak hurricane. Ida, unfortunately, if you were in areas like Houma or Thibodaux, the Lafourche Parish, Terrebonne, parts of St. Charles, I don't know if St. James got any big damage. They may have, but St. John the Baptist for sure, like the Laplace area, that area got damaged. So yeah, that's 2 years, yeah. But I had a student teacher, who actually said, well, Katrina may have not been a bad thing because poor people got out. It highlighted everything in the city. I actually had this shit. So I listened to that. And that was Dad, by the way, trying to listening in. I don't know if you heard him. But I remember all of this stuff, this bullshit. The people being, and especially The people trying to flee. What you saw in these images, this is where you can get the book if you haven't, as Katrina Eyes have not seen, ears have not heard. I remember I go further than that. When people were trying to flee, you saw the pictures here, and they were on the Crescent City Connection Bridge. And the Gretna police stopped them from leaving. They stopped evacuees from leaving from leaving New Orleans to get out. They held them at gunpoint. Told them to turn the F around on a Crescent City Connection. I watched. I marched. They didn't indict these officers. This is what the police chief of Gretna had to say. Listen to this shit.
The Gretna police chief says the department is happy that Officer Lawrence Vaughn has been vindicated of any criminal wrongdoing for firing his weapon as a warning shot to what he calls an aggressive crowd trying to cross the bridge.
The officer did not fire the shot at the crowd, over the crowd. It was fired over his shoulder, over the side of the bridge.
Gretna Police Chief Arthur Lawson says no one was allowed to cross the bridge on foot because there was no food, water, supplies, or services the department could offer evacuees. He also says he was aware that supplies were going to be handed out at the convention center, so he, along with other law enforcement agencies, directed people to the convention center. The city of Gretna's attorney, Franz Zibelich, says Attorney General Charles Fody investigated the case and turned it over to the Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office directly after the storm. Zibelich says the DA's office finished its investigation quickly, but did not bring the case to a grand jury until now.
And we know what happened in the convention center. There were no supplies. It ran out. The people were screaming for help. This was a crock of bullshit.
The grand jury heard the entirety of the case this morning. It took a couple of hours. The grand jury deliberated for, I want to say, and I can ask Major Christiana, I want to say 2 minutes or less, and they were back out. This was never a crime.
Lawson says the case should never have gone to a grand jury. He says it was a political issue involving some legislators who were looking to make a dollar off the case.
It's ironic that Senator Cleo Fields, who sat and chaired the committee and requested that this investigation be opened by the Attorney General's office, eventually recused himself from that committee, stepped down from the committee, and became the plaintiff's attorney in this lawsuit.
Zibelich says there are several class action lawsuits pending in federal court alleging that the Gretna Police Department closed the bridge due to racism against African Americans. Both the chief and the city attorney say the blockade was not a race issue, but simply a safety issue. On your side from Gretna, Toslin Alfonso, WDSU, News Channel 6.
Well, there's a bullshit, and I'm going to tell you why. First and foremost, the bridge isn't owned by the city of Gretna. Crescent City Connection, that is owned by the state, number one. So they don't have jurisdiction to just stop an entire group of people from leaving the bridge, from getting on a bridge. There was no traffic going on. There was no cars passing over there because everything was flooded. New Orleans, 80% of New Orleans was flooded. How you gonna get on the bridge with a car? They had an entire blockade on these people. Bullshit. Everybody knows that the city of Gretna, Jefferson Parish, how they get down with black folks. Jefferson Parish, that was Harry Lee's territory. Harry Lee was the worst of the worst. We talk about stop Asian hate and all this stuff. This motherfucker hated blacks. I don't have any sympathy for Harry Lee. Was dog whistling for the white racist over there in Jefferson. He stopped kids at skating rinks, held them up like they were criminals. he wanted to put a blockade up to prevent New Orleans people from New Orleans from crossing over into Jefferson. Because I live on the East Bank, but on the opposite, there's the West Bank if you're from New Orleans, and on the West Bank is Algiers, which is the oldest port, the oldest neighborhood in New Orleans is Algiers. And next to Algiers is Jefferson Parish. So Jefferson and Algiers share territory, similar, like right in the same vicinity. But everybody goes and shops in Jefferson Parish because that's where everything goes. That's where the malls are. That's where the grocery stores are. And the people were trying to get to the other side because that's the thing. And here's another thing. He mentioned the crescents. He said supplies were going to be passed out at the convention center. The people were the ones leaving the convention center. Those are the people that were leaving. So I saw all this. Yeah, Violet, Louise. Well, Violet is all the way in Chalmette. I mean, in St. Bernard. Chalmette is another city in St. Bernard. Violet is in St. Bernard. They were tore up. They were closer to water. They were closer to the I mean, they're closer to the river and to the swamps and so forth. So all that was underwater. So as we sit here, so that's why I wrote the book, was to dispel the stuff, and then the looting, how they said white folks found and black folks looted, and we found out that it was the same reporter. They did the same story. Black people find, white people loot. They found food. I met a guy named Robert Ballard, Dr. Robert Bullitt. He was from Clark Atlanta University. He spoke at Southern. And, just telling you my story, ladies and gentlemen, just telling you my story. I was up at Southern, and I was writing this book or preparing. That's when I wrote the book back in 06. I started and said I was going to do this. It was going to be therapeutic. And I also said I was going to go and talk to I was going to talk to people there. I had a friend who was living in Algiers who stayed. He had backup generators, power was out, but he talked about all stuff that was going on. I told y'all about him. Irvin Jones was a teacher of mine out of high school. Was a good friend. May he rest in peace. But all of this stuff was documented. So I remember this stuff, man. I had Dick Gregory I interviewed. I have his interviews. I'm going to upload those. I had interviewed Tom Watson, Reverend Tom Watson. I interviewed Cynthia Willard Lewis, who was our representative for city council. She was also state rep at one point in New Orleans East. Chantel Young, who lived in the St. Bernard projects. She remembers when the water came up after, it was hours after the storm. Her and her mother. I interviewed so many people. Mama D, your Mama D, I interviewed her. Malik Rahim. Malik actually did a lot of work out there. So that was always, that's how this thing started. Now, y'all got to forgive me if I don't come on the camera. In my jammies, I just wanted to just do this through here if I could. But yeah, this is the stuff I was talking about. Black people loot, white people find. I remember this. And they had images of it. So this was it. The whites found and the black people looted. I recorded all of this. I don't know if you can see, but yeah, we did stuff like this. I remember even when, and look, a lot of the looting that was done, there was looting done by the police officers. The police shootings that took place, Henry Glover, the shootings on the Dangzinger Bridge, that was with Romel Madison's brother and another young man out here out here in New Orleans East. I remember that, but we don't talk about that. So all of this shaped my at 19 years old. So I finished the book in 2008. So for 2.5 years, you want to say, give or take, this shaped my life. Yeah, Henry Glover was the big one. The only person that went to jail was the one that covered it up by burning the body, but the one that killed him got off. Yeah, Henry Glover. I didn't talk about that in the book because that trial was still going on, and I was focusing on other stuff. But yeah, the shootings of Henry Glover. I knew people who got shot at. Malik even bad people being hunted like dogs. All right. I do not know what happened. Sorry about that. I just was saying, I'm back. Don't worry. When I was talking about black people looting, white people fighting, I said, yeah, Malik knew of people who got shot. But yeah, Henry Glover was the big case here. Uh, Henry Glover and the Dangzinger shootings. And Glover This was out on the West Bank again. This was out in Algiers where he was shot by David Warren with a sniper rifle. This was on September 2nd. And he was tried on federal charges but was acquitted. Other officers that were involved were Gregory McCrae, Robert Italino, Travis McCabe, and Dwayne Schumerman. So Glover went to a strip mall to retrieve some suitcases of loot. An NOPD officer, David Warren, fatally shot Glover from a second-story balcony where Warren had been guarding a detective bureau office. Now he got the other officers that were involved, including Schumerman. He was charged with assaulting civilians who came to Glover's aid and obstructing justice into the burning of Glover's body, obstructing the federal investigation. Travis McCabe was charged with obstruction of justice and lying to the FBI. He was also charged with lying to a federal grand jury. Officer Italino was charged with obstructing justice and lying to the FBI. In total, the 11-count indictment accused the 5 officers for their role in the fatal shooting of Glover, the assaulting of Glover's brother and one of his neighbors, and attempting to conceal their actions through activities such as the attempted cremation of Glover's corpse. Glover's death was highlighted as an example of police misconduct in the direct aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. So the only person now I'm going to read to you this. So what happened was he shot Glover from a second story building with a basically with a 22-3 rifle, 22 caliber. That's like a AR-15. Shot him with a rifle, and so you can read this. Yeah, so much has happened. Shot him right in the chest. Glover's brother and his sister came to his aid. A neighbor of Glover named William Tanner drove Glover and his brother to seek medical attention at a nearby school, which had been commandeered by a SWAT team of officers. The officers testified in trial that Tanner actually fled from a marked police car near the school. It was only after several other police cars joined the chase that he stopped on the Mercedes Street side of the school. Neither of the two men knew how Glover had been injured. SWAT officers at the school immediately placed Tanner and King into handcuffs and then allegedly beat them. The jury acquitted the officers on this charge. Testimony in trial also alleged that an African-American officer also struck one of the detained men, but little effort was put into finding that officer. While it was alleged by William Tanner in numerous interviews that the SWAT officers let Henry Glover bleed to death in the car, the trial testimony of Lieutenant Schumerman proved in fact that he had checked Glover's body for any signs of life, and he, in fact, was already deceased. The proof was in the forms of the photographs provided to the defense attorneys in discovery. No NOPD officer Gregory McCrae set fire to Glover's body as it sat inside Tanner's 2001 Chevy Malibu. The car was left parked on a Mississippi River levee down the street from an NOPD office. Istefan Bola, a former law enforcement officer who had come in from out of state, discovered Glover's corpse on September 9th. He admitted in trial that he videotaped the burned car with Glover's remains and has since sold copies of the videotape. Judge Lance Frick, on March 31st, 2011, Judge Lance Africk sentenced David Warren to 25 years and 9 months in federal prison on federal civil rights violation of committing manslaughter with a firearm. Judge Africk sentenced Gregory McCrae to 17 years and 3 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release on obstruction of justice and another civil rights charge. Afric told Warren, Henry Glover was not at the strip mall to commit suicide. He was there to retrieve some baby clothing. You killed the man. Despite your tenacious arguments to the contrary, it was no mistake. However, on December 17, 2012, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals vacated Warren's convictions, and one of the convictions related to McCrae ordering new trials on these charges. The three-judge panel found, among other concerns, that the trials of the two men should have been conducted separately. Warren was acquitted in 2013. McCrae was resentenced to 17 years and 3 months in prison. You did not merely burn a corpse. You, a law enforcement officer, burned a corpse to obstruct justice, Judge Afric said. He said the acquittal of Warren was irrelevant to McCrae's own crimes. McCrae was granted a resentencing hearing after his obstruction of justice conviction was overturned entirely in 2015. In 2016, Afric reduced McCrae's sentence to 11 years and 9 months, which was within the federal guidelines. However, he rejected calls for a greater reduction on the grounds that McCrae was mentally disturbed at the time of the crime, stating a long prison sentence was still warranted due to the severity of the crime. The facts behind your conviction deal with more than the burning of an automobile, he said. By hiding behind a blue wall of silence, you were hiding the truth. Yeah, I remember this stuff. So, the Dangzinger shooting. There was also a shooting involving some Blackwater defense contractors for the Defense Department. I always thought it was on Dangzinger. I was getting it confused. I think, and they on Dangzinger in that incident. But if you read the book, we talk about that because I think what happened and what they did with the sentencing, with the shooting, was that the shooting with the contractors was not on that Dangzinger bridge, but rather it was on the bridge next to it, which would have been the Ted Hickney Bridge. Yeah, but the officers, the Dangzinger shootings, yeah. Ronald Madison and James Brissett were the two individuals that were killed by the cops. So this, I can't go no more, man. But that's just the stuff we saw. Who's that? Ma or Dad?
Yes, I fixed it.
Okay, damn, I'm still doing my live stream.
I'm sorry. You did okay.
Guys, that's Dad talking to me in the back. The shooting on Dangzinger, remember that?
Yeah.
You remember there was also a story of some Defense Department workers that were shot in a shootout with police?
It was some
mercenaries?
It was some private citizens who were crossing the bridge to get to a safe place, and it was some police officers and mercenaries that they were told that there were some people shooting from the bridge, and they assumed that the people walking across the bridge were actual.
You talk about the Dangzinger shooting
with Dr. Madison's brother.
Yeah, but I'm talking about a different article. It was the same date that came out when they said there was a shooting with some men.
Mercenaries.
for the Defense Department and
Yeah.
police officers, and we always trying to figure out, were they getting it confused with the Danziger shooting, or was it the Ted Hinkey Bridge,
The San Hoop Bridge.
the bridge by the lake? Ted
No.
Hickney.
No, it wasn't. No, there was nothing happening on Ted Hickey. It was at the Danziger. It was private citizens, and it was police officers and mercenaries. I
Yeah.
know because I've spoken to Romero about it.
Yeah, but what about why weren't the mercenaries mentioned in the police report?
I had no idea.
So the mercenaries, they weren't mentioned in this story.
It was the these were the same guys who were patrolling up around.
You talking about Blackwater?
Yeah.
Right.
Israeli mercenaries.
Yeah, they had Israeli mercenaries that were in town in New Orleans too. Now, one other anecdote about this, ladies and gentlemen, that I had confirmed from someone, not about this incident, but just in general with Katrina, was that I spoke with Dick Gregory, and he told me that a month before Katrina happened, Baron Nagin had moved his family to Dallas.
Right.
I also know, because this has been confirmed, that subsequent to Katrina, there were some officers, some high-ranking, I want to say, well-to-do aristocrats that met with Nagin in Dallas, and this has been confirmed. They said out of their own mouths that they wanted a smaller New Orleans.
Right.
Now, what is a smaller New Orleans to you? Now, Nagin didn't go along with that because he talked about a chocolate city. But then we know what happened with Ray Nagin. Ray Nagin went to jail. Prisons subsequently after his term subsequently after his term as second term as mayor, which was highly contested. That was between him and Mitch Landrieu, and Landrieu became mayor after Nagin left office, and Landrieu didn't do shit. Landrieu was a terrible mayor. He was not good at all. But yeah, I remember all of this stuff. They wanted a smaller New Orleans.
Small New Orleans would be, what better way to make it smaller would be to take the largest landmass of New Orleans East, and the Lower Ninth Ward, and make them all
close the door if you're gonna talk.
Okay, and make them all green space.
Yeah, they were gonna make it green space. Right. That's what I told everybody. They had to bring New Orleans back commission, which they talked about doing that. They wanted to make New Orleans green space. I had a guy who I met who said he actually saw a map before Katrina. It was a map of what New Orleans would look like, and it was no New Orleans East, and it was no Lower Ninth Ward, or no Desire. Everything was basically up to the Vieux Carré.
Right. Well, the Industrial Canal.
The Treme, yeah.
And the reason for that was they wanted to make this green space was because they wanted to put container vessels, make this a storage area for container vessels off of ships.
They wanted to make the area for shipping.
Right, for container vessels, because you can charge more money for storage of container vessels than you can for taxes, homeowners' taxes.
Yeah.
Tax.
By the
That's
way,
what they wanted to do.
the officers that were involved in the Danziger shooting, they had to get new trials because even after they were convicted, they had their cases overturned because one of the attorneys for the Department of Justice, the prosecutors, basically were tweeting about it. They blogged about it, and subsequently, the judge, Kurt Engelhardt, had to order a new trial as a result. And then a plea deal was entered in where they all pled guilty, and the sentencing range was from 3 to 12 years. And 3 of the officers were white and 2 were black. They wanted a vanilla city. They wanted to make this shipping areas. They wanted to make a green space, but
They wanted the blacks out of the water.
yes,
Make
they
them
wanted vanilla.
make them as unnoticeable as possible.
Right. And they still do because certain areas have not been rebuilt. They have not put adequate businesses in New Orleans East. There's no adequate shopping or health care in the lower ninth ward.
And it's by design.
Yeah, it's by design. Y'all hit that like, share, and subscribe button. That's the only way people know we're in here. Hit that notification bell so we can, when you go live, we'll get notifications when we are live. And you can get a copy of that book, Katrina Eyes Have Not Seen, Ears Have Not Heard, on Amazon, ladies and gentlemen. So today, as we commemorate the 18th anniversary of Katrina, I also would be remiss. Today is also the birthday of the King of Pop, Michael Jackson. Had he lived, he would have been 65 years old one day. You're making a lot of noise now.
I'm leaving.
Okay. Dad's leaving. He says goodbye, guys. So today is the 65th birthday of the King of Pop, Michael Jackson. And, August 29, 2005. It's also the second anniversary of Hurricane Ida. We haven't forgotten that. Ida did a lot of damage, did a lot of wind damage here in New Orleans. And I want to just also commemorate and share that with Danielle, who was affected by the hurricane, who remembers that. No, we won't forget Hurricane Ida. But today is Brother Michael's birthday. And Michael Jackson, in my opinion, and I think in most opinions, is one of the greatest entertainer of all time, especially I haven't ever seen. I mean, who's ever seen what entertainer compares today, where you got white men passing out, white men from Russians passing out when Michael Jackson stepped on stage, when he just stopped and looked, when he jumped out. I can't play any videos of Michael Jackson's performances, as you know, I'm gonna get a copyright strike. But when he jumped out at the Super Bowl for 3 minutes, just looking at the crowd, and he's eating it up. The crowd is going nuts. They have EMTs passing out when Michael Jackson was performing. That's how much impact that man had. You're not going to see stuff like that again, but there are some simps who will say there's no entertainer. There are other entertainers better than Michael Jackson. They've said Beyonce. They've said Taylor Swift. They must know nothing about music. Like this fool, for instance. This is Andrew Schultz. Listen to what he had to say. Hold on.
I was going to be blown away, and it was spectacular. I hate we have to compare him. It's unfair to Beyonce. The only person you can compare Taylor to is Michael Jackson. If you talk about hits, I don't want to do this, but we could do it. You can't tell me Beyonce has the same amount of hits, no features, as Taylor.
No, she does.
Take away the features, you can't even name them.
Wait, are you talking about no Destiny's Child?
No Destiny Childs, no Jay-Z, no Sean Paul.
Oh, you mean with nobody?
No features! Why we acting like we don't know what features are? What I hate is that y'all even bring Beyonce into it. Y'all need to just compare Taylor Swift and Michael Jackson, and it's close. We do not want to have the conversation of writing their own songs, and that's what makes a great artist. We're not talking about the greatest performer of all
There's
time.
no way Taylor writes all
If all of it,
Nah. Michael Jackson didn't even write his own music.
that's why I'm trying to say, if we want to have the conversation of greatest artists of all time, and I know that we don't want to have this conversation, it's Taylor motherfucking Swift. I went to Taylor.
Okay. I was done when Charlemagne opened up his mouth. Now, Charlemagne, we already know how he is. But Charlemagne is even lying, saying that Michael never wrote his own music. Bullshit. Let's start with this. You see, I think this is a case because I even saw the rapper from Chicago, Chance the Rapper, even say Beyonce did more in one of her performances than Michael ever did, or something like that. He said that a couple years ago, and let's call bullshit on it. Now, Charlemagne said Michael Jackson didn't even write his own songs. Michael Jackson is a member. I want to show you this. Hold on. Okay, I want you to look at this. Charlemagne, this is for you, the rest of the peasants, to bow to the king of pop. Shout out to Nicole also, because Nicole reminded me of this, but I saw this because I'm on here all the time. Y'all know I write songs. Michael Jackson, this is inducted in 2002, 1958 to 2009. They had at the top, the king of pop, his catalog with BMI. You can browse. 13 Grammys, wrote over 200 songs. As a songwriter, he penned more than 150 songs, with more than 20 reaching multi-million performance status on American radio and television. He also wrote songs, when his sister Rebe had a solo career, she had a song called Centipede. He wrote and produced that. He also, from the Bad album, he wrote most, if not all, of those songs, maybe with the exception of one or two. From Smooth Criminal to Speed Demon to to Bad, You're Just Another Part of Me. He did all of that. The Way You Make Me Feel. Now, did he have other songwriters that worked on those albums like Thriller and Off the Wall? Yes. Paul McCartney wrote a song for Michael for Off the Wall. And Quincy Jones co-wrote PYT with was it Jim? Who was the singer that sang? James Ingram. They wrote PYT together. Quincy Jones was a producer. And yes, as a producer and composer like Q was, as great as he was, he wrote songs as well. And he was Michael's producer. And yes, I'll give credit where credit has to be given where credit is due. He was a large part of the success of Michael Jackson in the 80s with his 3 albums. But Michael still had to sing. He still had to have the input. He still danced. So we destroyed 2 lies already. Number one, you said he didn't write his own songs. That was a lie. That's a lie. You can look right here. They give you a breakdown of the songs that he wrote. You can browse it on BMI's catalog. You can search. If you go to ASCAP, by the way, if you type my name in, you can see some of the songs I've worked in. Now, the other thing they said, he talked about performances. Taylor Swift, and I'm not saying Taylor is not a great songwriter if you listen to her, but everybody I don't think is bragging about Taylor Swift singing September by Earth, Wind, and Fire. Just remember that hurt my ears to this day. Ugh. But this is an example, ladies and gentlemen, what you saw with Schultz and others of everybody liking the new toy at Christmas. But you know what happens when you play with that toy at Christmas, when you go from the G.I. Joe to the Super Soaker, is that eventually the Super Soaker will break. The springs on it wear out. G.I. Joe can remain in its package and be a vintage. Now, I bring all of this up. The other thing they said in terms of performances, Michael Jackson is in the Guinness World Book of Records for having an album that is still the best-selling album of all time, Thriller. According to the Guinness World Book of Records, you can read right here on Wikipedia, it has sold more than 70 million copies worldwide. I don't believe that's the actual number. That is an accurate number. It's more than that. That's just the official sale. Now, in a few years ago, they said it was now the second. It's the best selling non compilation. It's still the best selling non compilation album, meaning a song from all different albums that they put on another cassette or album and sell it. It's still the best selling non compilation album and the second best selling album overall in the United States, and was certified 34 times platinum. Now, the greatest hits from the Eagles is the best selling album in the United States in history. But the reason they do that, because they try to diminish the brothers' accomplishments, is that it's based only on an RIAA certification. That's it. Today, what Michael Jackson did with Thriller, you think about that. That was a record that stood for 34 years. This Thriller was released in 1982. 1982. This is over 40 years ago to now. You're talking about buying, and you had to buy albums in a record store. You couldn't download. You could listen to Taylor Swift on Spotify or Pandora on iHeartRadio. It's easier now because artists can get out their songs more than what you could do back then. You had to hope if you were trying to break into the music industry, you do a cassette, a demo, and hope that you give a tape to an exec and hope they'd give you a call. Michael Jackson had to put in work. The Thriller album, my personal favorite is Off the Wall, the Off the Wall album, but the Thriller album is the best selling of all time. The songs that were on there from Billie Jean, Beat It, Wanna Be Starting Something, Human Nature, Thriller, PYT. And the music videos. Let's talk about that. Nobody does music videos anymore. Taylor Swift don't have to do a music video. If they do a music video or anything close to it, it's on a phone. It's recorded. There's no MTV anymore. And his brother, my thing about Brother Michael too was that he owned his own catalog. I want y'all to look at this too. I'm gonna put this up, but the Thrillers. I'm gonna talk about that in a little bit. Go back to the songwriting, but the Thriller music video that was directed by John Landis, that was groundbreaking, and he didn't like to call the music videos. They were short films. That's how he treated his video. They don't do it anymore. And you know why? Because he set the bar. Dancing with Zombies. The Billie Jean video was the first video by a black artist to be played in rotation. MTV had a color bar. They had a racial barrier. They would not allow blacks on MTV in heavy rotation. You're absolutely right, Amir. Anytime Michael Jackson's music videos came on, everybody stopped doing what they were doing. That was a must-see event. That was must-see TV before must-see TV. My main memories of Michael as a kid, I was born in the 80s, so I didn't get to see Billie Jean and Beat It and Bad. I'm sorry, Billie Jean and Beat It and Thriller in the 80s when they debuted, but I did get to see Remember the Time. I saw uh in the closet. I saw the Jam video when he did the Dangerous album, when he did that video with Michael Jordan, trying to teach Michael Jordan how to dance, and Jordan is trying to teach Michael Jackson how to play basketball. Walter Yetnikoff was the president of CBS Records, and he had to threaten MTV that they would pull their entire catalog if it didn't change their stance on racial discrimination. He says, I said to MTV, I'm pulling everything we have off the air, all of our product. I'm not going to give you any more videos, and I'm going to go public and fucking tell them about the fact that you don't want to play music by a black guy. And so MTV relented, and the Billie Jean music video debuted on March 10th, 1983. After the video was aired in heavy rotation, Thriller went on to sell an additional 10 million copies. It was one of the first videos by a black artist to be aired regularly by the channel. It was directed by Steve Barron. And they say it was so hard, the photographer was having a problem. They were having a problem when every time Michael would stand, because Michael doesn't stand still, so you had to keep up with him. So each step had to light as if it as he touches something. I remember when he performed this for the Motown 25 performance. That's still arguably the greatest performance of all time. Fred Astaire called Michael Jackson after it and commended him. Sammy Davis Jr. called him. Even after he performed and got off and the sad part is they had more to the show after that. But when, people had to follow Michael Jackson. Yeah. So yeah, you still had to follow Mike, man, and that was the thing. So he did such a great job with it. The biggest takeaway, what was really upsetting to him after the show was over, he was more upset at his performance, and you wouldn't think why, but the reason was because he was trying to stand on his toes after he did the moonwalk for 4 seconds longer, several seconds longer. So he was upset about that. So they will never. So they're never gonna have anything like this again. A Michael Jackson. You can never replace a Michael Jackson. And I don't care what new artist is hot right now. They all learn from the king. There's no, and that's because the style of music today is all influenced by Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson and Prince. They were the only one. You want to compare somebody to Michael Jackson? Though I can say Prince might be the only one that can go up against him, or James Brown, because Michael learned from James Brown. Michael idolized Jackie Wilson and James Brown and Fred Astaire. A lot of stuff he did, the generosity too, which is another thing I got to get to. He's in the Guinness World Book of Records as the most charitable celebrity of all time, given his entire paycheck from the Victory Tour to burn victims, going to hospitals, to children's hospitals, even outside the country, going to kids, visit them. When he bought the Beatles catalog, and this is another thing, Michael was deep. Michael knew there was a business side to the music game. A lot of artists, especially when you see singers and rappers today, they spend their money on BS. Michael was a businessman. He didn't want to end up broke like Jackie Wilson or struggling like some of these performers that are still touring past their prime, that still got to perform. The David Ruffins, the people that were addicted to drugs and stuff. And that's another thing. When I talk about generosity, he paid for David Ruffin's funeral. Do y'all know that? When he bought the Beatles catalog, he gave Little Richard the entire catalog back. Didn't pay him nothing. He said, "You impacted us so much, you deserve this. Here, man." When he found out Sly Stone was in trouble because he owned Sly's catalog as well, that catalog just didn't have the Beatles in it. It was a whole collection of black artists, including Nat King Cole, Little Richard, Sly Stone, the Cornelius Brothers, and the Sister Rose. That's why he bought that catalog. But let's just destroy the lie here. This is the My Jack music catalog. This is there are 709 working titles in this catalog. These are the songs that Michael Jackson bought in his music catalog. Now that is not including the Sony ATV, because he owned the ATV catalog. That's the Beatles. My accent changes every time I say the Beatles. That has his catalog in it. But look, he's got Backstabbers. This is it here. My Jack Music. This is 709 works. 16 Candles. Ain't No Stopping Us Now. Ain't no stopping us now. We found the groove. Backstabbers. Bad. Beat It. Betcha by Golly Wow by the Stylistics. Billie Jean. Black or White. Crying in the Chapel. That's also part of Elvis Presley has, Michael owned his father-in-law's music. He owned Elvis's music. Dance and Shout, Shake Your Body Down to the Ground. Dance to the Music by Sly. This is Sylvester Stewart. That's Sly Stone. Dead End. Don't Matter to Me. Don't Stop. Don't Stop the Music. Everyday People, Fake Love, Family Affair, For the Love of Money by the OJs. The Girl Is Mine. Should be called Your Publishing's Mine, Paul. That's what he told Paul McCartney. The girl is mine. Your publishing's mine. So kiss my black behind. He owns Goldfinger, the James Bond song. Gold Digger, the Kanye West song. Great Balls of Fire. Heal the World. Higher and Higher. I Just Can't Stop Loving You. Hot Fun in the Summertime. I'm Stone in Love with You. That's another one by the Stylistics. I've Got a Woman. So he's got Ray Charles music. Love Train. Mr. Bojangles. Mr. Wendell. Mystery Train. People Get Ready. Remember the Time. Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You. Say, Say, Say. Shake, Rattle, and Roll. He's got Aretha Franklin song, Since You've Been Gone, Sweet, Sweet Baby. Smooth Criminal. I, this is the catalog. Another part of me. He got George Clinton stuff in here. What they do? They smile in your face all the time. They want to take your place. The backstabbers, backstab you. So Michael Jackson was on another one, ladies and gentlemen. But that's what I want to show you about the songs. And I got to give a shout out, especially as we celebrate his birthday. Shout out to his family, in particular, my man Taj. I don't know if Taj is watching, but Taj, I haven't talked to you in a while, man. I hope you're doing fine, brother. Shout out to you and your family. To his mother, Catherine Jackson, who's still around. I saw some pictures of her recently. She still looks good. She's in a wheelchair now, but she's in her 90s. Still a great looking woman. Special shout out to her. Thank you for giving us birthing the entire Jackson clan. The Jackson Five, all of them. Shout out to his brothers, Jackie, Jermaine, and Tito and Marlon. His children, Paris, Blanket. I know he doesn't like to be called Blanket anymore. BG and Prince. His sisters, Janet, Rebe, and Latoya. Shout out to them. And to the late Joe Jackson. Joe Jackson, a lot of people, let me put Joe Jackson's picture up here. But I got to say this. If there was no Joe Jackson, there is no Michael Jackson. He is arguably the greatest manager that ever lived because he managed not only his boys, the Jackson Five, getting them out of the hood, getting them to Motown, but he also managed to take care of them at the same time. He also helped guide his daughter's career, Janet. Without him, there's no Janet Jackson musically. So he is responsible for that family being in a position where they are, because even Michael's grandchildren, even the grandkids like Taj and TJ and Terriel and the others, I mean, look, they started their own music group. Now, I'm not saying now, of course, they're talented, but I think it helped being that Michael Jackson was your uncle and Janet Jackson's your aunt. Your father Tito is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with his brothers. It's like, oh, you Michael's nephew? Yeah, come on in. Use it. But Joe Jackson had a vision. He was the prototype for many black fathers. If you look at the children who are child prodigies that are multimillionaires, I look at Richard Williams. I look at the Colonel Woods, Tiger Woods' father, and a few others. They were the prototype for black children at that time who became successful. Without the black fathers, they wouldn't be where they were. And Joe Jackson did that. So special shout out to Joe Jackson on this day. But I wish I could play more of Michael's music. But yeah, man, my favorite memories of Michael, too, another memory I want to share is I remember the first time I think I ever saw Michael Jackson was Alvin and the Chipmunks cartoon. I told Taj this because Alvin was dancing to Billie Jean with Michael at a school performance. So that was on NBC. It was a cartoon. So that's the first time I remember seeing Michael. And then the other one was the Leave Me Alone video he did. But yeah, that's my memories of Michael. Shout out to Tom Mesro. I haven't spoken to Tom in a while, but they won't leave this man alone, man. They still going after this man too, which is a shame. That this man has been dead for over 10 years. He's been dead for over 14 years, and they're still going at him. That's a shame, man. And I want to give a special shout out to Torian Rain because he had a video that dropped. He did an interview with my sister Nicole. Shout out to her and this other brother. Sorry, I can't remember your name, but they did a whole video that debuted today. That they set it up obviously because it's Michael's birthday about them two punks that are going after the state of Michael Jackson, Safe Chuck and Robson. Yeah, them those bullshit lawsuits. Yeah, it's stupid. I mean, look, yeah, and writing "We Are the World," he wrote 90% of that with Lionel Richie for aid to Africa. So on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, meeting the presidents, President Reagan, President Bush, President Clinton. I don't think he met Obama. The Grammy wins, yeah. He got what, 8 records for Thriller? 8 Grammys for Thriller? I said 8 records, I'm sorry. Yeah, this shit was my brother hid under the table when he saw this. Yeah, off the wall, man. So yeah, I just you're not gonna get this again. The Wiz, I'm just remembering all the stuff. They had the Jackson 5 cartoon. My another memory, if I could just say this, I'm gonna wrap it up honestly. Uh the Moonwalker movie he did back in '88. That's another memory I had of Brother Michael. But yeah, man, shout out to Mike. May he rest in peace. Happy birthday, brother. And don't worry, those sissies will not get anything off of you. We got your back. We're not gonna let them keep attacking our black icons, ladies and gentlemen. We gotta go after them. We can't let somebody go after somebody, one of our heroes in death, and they ain't got no proof of it. They got no proof, no evidence, nothing like that. We're not tolerating it. Dirty Diana is another favorite. But that's all I got to say tonight. I don't want to keep going on, man. But may the brother rest in peace. Brother Michael Jackson. He is still missed. All right. I'm out, family. Hit that like, share, and subscribe button. I know it's getting late. It's after 11, so I've been on here too long. I gotta get up in the morning myself. But y'all make sure if you want to advertise, hit me up in an email. When we talk about black icons, also don't forget to get the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania versus William H. Cosby available on Amazon Kindle. And please, 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 as you know, the channel's not monetized. If you would wish, donate to the Cash App, PayPal, Zelle at Gavin Richard Esquire right there, or Google Pay or Zelle, ladies and gentlemen. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Remembering Katrina. We're also remembering the time Michael's 65th birthday. It's been a great broadcast. I will be back this Thursday. We're going to talk. I know they had a lot of stuff going on over the weekend and this past week. I have not discussed, but I will talk about this shooting in Jacksonville on Thursday, as well as that Mammy. I'm going to save it for that councilwoman that went at people that booed DeSantis. We're going to talk about all of that. So y'all stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, be one, be safe, and be blessed. Thank y'all very much. Love y'all. I'll holla.